All right. As we go in, again, welcome to our Healing Wounds Building Peace workshop. This is hosted by Peace Catalyst International. If you are not very familiar with Peace Catalyst, we are an international network of Christian peace builders. We're all dreaming of a world where the church is known for building peace, not breaking it. I think many of us have experiences of the church being on the wrong side of peace. The way we do this, we mobilize Christians and our local neighbors to collaborate for peace across lines of difference, both working for healing and conciliation, but also justice. We do this we equip people with skills and theology for peace. We do workshops like this. We have resources, small group guides that are out trying to spread the skills and understand as much as we can. And we are a network of local peace builders. We have people like Mirela, who are planted in local communities, working with their neighbors and thinking about what does peace look like in this context and trying to catalyze that. And that's happening across the globe. We would love for people to get further involved with Peace Catalyst if this interests you or you want to talk more. We are a donation-based organization. So if you want to become a financial partner with us, donations help us to be able to afford events like these that are free and affordable for everybody. Donations help us to support peace builders from communities of struggle. Not everybody has access to deep pockets to be able to fund their work, and we want to be able to spread that wealth around. And also, it's just a good way to support a growing peace movement in the church. If you look at the church and you're like, it can be so much more, it should be so much more, we would love to partner with you to help make that happen. Also, you can dive in more webinars and workshops like this. We also do more intensive courses and workshops to go for weeks on around trauma and social justice, community organizing, interpersonal conflict skills. We have Christian peace building small groups that either we sometimes lead or it's a curriculum that you can lead. If you're like, I know people in my church or in my community, I would love to have conversations about what peace and faith look like. We would love to help you with that. Reach out. And we also do peace pilgrimages. Brian, who is on this call, has led pilgrimages to Bosnia and Herzegovina multiple times, taking trips to learn about peace building in that context. And we are working on one for Israel and Palestine next year. So stay tuned if you want to travel with us. And we're always looking for people to join us. You can volunteer as a peace ambassador and do peace catalyst stuff in your own community, and we'll support you in that. Sorry, got a little bit of a cough. You can lead small groups or volunteer in other ways, help us mobilize the church. And if you want our support in fundraising to be able to be a full-time or part-time peace builder yourself, come work with us, come talk to us. Today's conversation will be with Mirela Popaja-Hadžić, who I'll actually let her introduce herself a bit more here. You saw her bio and the stuff. I'm not just gonna read the text to you, but Mirela can highlight the parts that she wants to. But she's been a peace catalyst for several years. She is both a therapist and trauma informed peace building trainer who's on the ground with us in Bosnia. So, and if you would like to learn more about her work or donate to her work, or just follow her, you can either scan this code or use that link at the bottom and we'll email it out afterwards also. But I'd love to highlight the work she is doing because Mirela is both crucial to her context and crucial to Peace Catalyst, and we're very happy she's with us. And with that, I will end my spotlights and pass it over to Mirela.
Thank you, Peter, for that wonderful introduction of who we are as Peacebuilding, Peacebuilding Catalyst organization, and then also introducing me. So hi everyone again. Good evening from Sarajevo. I don't know what time zone is where you are, but good morning, good afternoon. I hope you had a good day so far. So I I don't want to take like a lot of time introducing myself because Peter already kind of said, and I will say in the following minutes that I have, I will kind of dive more into the work that I'm doing. But yeah, I live in Sarajevo. I'm 38 years old. I live with my husband and my daughter here. And I've been with Peace Catalyst for a year and a half now, 2 years more approaching. And it's been wonderful experience for me because as somebody who is becoming a Gestalt therapist, I got a chance to really explore how peace building looks like from a psychology perspective. And because my interest is trauma, I would love to dive more into, trauma. What does trauma mean? How does it affect us as society and also us as individuals? I've given a wonderful opportunity to do that in Peace Catalyst, and I've really realized something, along the way, that we can really not have peace building if we do not address trauma, if we do not address what is happening inside and how does conflict, why do we even have a conflict? And as a philosophy major, these are always the questions that I wanted to ask, like why do things happen the way they do, and why do people behave the way they do? I always want to go deep, I always want to go to the root of the issue. And really, I have the opportunity here to do that. To do that more and more, and to work with wonderful people, who are dedicated for peace building, and for exploration, further on exploration of trauma, and what does that mean? um, but before we dive into all the concepts, I'm going to share with you 5 concepts for trauma aware peace building. But before we dive into that, I would love to create a safe space between us, and just to connect us all together, so that we can experience this on a communal level. I know that we are on Zoom. I know that we are all in our own spaces, but let's try and connect together, so that we can feel safe and share with each other, in a deeper way. So, if you can and are willing, maybe first just connect with your bodies and connect with your breath, connect with the place where you're sitting, and just start taking deep breaths and check in, kind of, where are you now? What is happening inside of your body? Are there some aches or pressures or whatever is happening? Just kind of check it. Don't try to change it or anything, but make it known to yourself. And as you're breathing and as you're connecting with yourself, um, think of the one thing that brings you comfort or makes you safe, whatever that may be. It can be a cup of coffee. It can be a friend's hug or whatever. One thing that makes you feel safe. You can choose whether this is, something deep or something light, but I would love for you to share what that is in the chat. Just start writing it down whenever you're ready, of course. And as you're writing it down, I would love to invite the other participants to share as well with response to what people are writing. God promises, hugs from my family. So you can start writing your own comment and then start responding on other people's comments, like me too, or that is really good, or just a little emoji of a heart or whatever. Playing Santa for local kids, that's great. being present with loved ones. I'm currently with my daughter and grandkids for 10 days or so and feeling deeply loved. That's beautiful. So yeah, as you're writing things down, just pick one of the comments and reply, something that connects with you. Plan with my best friend. I don't feel danger. Does do not feel seek safety. Oh, you mean, oh, okay. You don't feel danger. So you, okay, I get it. That's okay. That's okay. So can you maybe just share something that makes you feel safe for other people? Hope. That's great. Sharing stories, laughing, goofing around with my husband and teenage kids. That's great. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I wanted to do this first because I think creating safe spaces is kind of like a foundation for whatever we are talking about. And we are talking about very hard topics like trauma and wounds and something that hurts and something that makes us deeply sad. So whenever we are talking about these topics, it is absolutely crucial to create that safe space for ourselves and for others. And I share this because I don't think that we all need to be therapists to do this. I think we can all do this as human beings. Each of us can kind of become trauma informed in ways to feel to make other people feel comfortable and safe, because by including others we including ourselves and including others, we can really do this. We can create this safe space. And this is something that I often see with my clients as well, especially when they come for the first time. They sit down and immediately, there's maybe some fear, there's maybe some hesitation. I like to do this with my clients first, to create a safe space, to let them know that I'm a safe person, that I'm not going to be judging them, that I'm going to have empathy for them, that this is a place where they can explore who they are and everything that they come with. And this also kind of shuts down the fear part in our brain, and then we can safely start to explore our emotions. There are really many resources to help us with this, to kind of create safety. How do we create safety? What do we do with that? We can start by practicing active listening. For once, you can give your full attention without judgment to someone to share their story, because I think this is really important for people to share their stories. You can also educate yourself, learn about trauma and its effects, through all kinds of resources. I like to read books. There are wonderful books on the topic, like Peter Levine's Waking the Tiger. It's a great resource for trauma awareness and what does trauma do to us. There's also Judith Herman's Trauma and Recovery book. It's really great. But if you want something to start with, I really recommend Carolyn Yoder's Little Book of Trauma Healing. It's created by Eastern Mennonite University Center for Justice and Peacebuilding. And it's an excellent starting point, kind of to get you started on what trauma is. So yeah, safe spaces are a foundation for healing and reconciliation. By taking these steps, we can contribute to building empathetic place for each other. Oh yeah, Peter, thank you so much for yeah. There's a link for the Carolyn Yoder's book. And so when we created the safe space, when we have the foundation, then we can move on to other things in trauma. And so what I would like for us today, in this hour and a half that we have, I would like this to be interactive. So what do you think so far? What do you feel so far? Do you have any comments? What would you like to say? I would love to hear from you. Do you have a question? Whatever. Don't be shy. We created a safe space.
I'll ask a question. Is there a specific body language that you use when trying to make a safe space? Like, I know you can verbally say things, but is there certain stuff that we can do to, yeah, show it through our body?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, including our body is really important whenever we are working with people who have been traumatized, or if we are encountering people with these problems. I think always kind of being aware of yourself and being aware of your body is extremely important. Having an open hands, having an open body, so that you show the other person that you are exposing your vulnerability, your front part. It's like the animals, when animals feel safe with you, they will expose their bellies to you, and they will lay down, and that's how they feel safe. It's the same with humans. We like to think that we are very different from animals, but we are just different type of animal but still kind of the same. So having just an open kind of open posture, sitting down, or most of the time imitating the other person. I think that's really important. What we do in therapy, what I do in Gestalt therapy, is when I'm working with a client and I ask them, would it be okay for them to make a movement with their body? If they do that, I do the same movement with them. And that creates safety also, because I'm not distancing myself. It's not something that they need to do, but we're doing this together. And I think that's important, to do something together. Does this answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for asking that. That's really cool. Anyone else?
I'm curious, Mirela, if you've gained any insights about how to do that on Zoom, because we're on Zoom and increasingly there's clients that people are working with on Zoom, and I feel like it's especially hard to do on Zoom.
Yeah, it is. It's hard, but it's not impossible. That's something that I've noticed. I think having a really good internet connection is really important, because there aren't those cuts, between you and the client. I think it is important for your client to see your face, so that you don't have your camera off, but that there's some kind of a contact. There's some kind of an eye contact between you and your client. Also it is important that you are saying the things that makes client feel comfortable, because over Zoom you can't really use your body that much, but you can still use your voice in how you're communicating. So yeah, these are some of the ways that you can connect with your client when you're working online. I know it's a bit harder, but it's not impossible. I've been working with clients online, and it worked so far. They really reach some important breakthroughs through this. All right. So when we created the safe space, after we have created a safe space, then the part of acknowledging trauma as a root issue comes to table. I think that recognizing trauma as a key is a key factor behind conflicts, and it helps address all these underlying issues really with people. I think it's very important for people to know that somebody hears them when they say that something has happened to them. For example, in my country, for many years, the root of conflict was attributed to ethnic or religious or political differences. We really never talked about trauma. It was always this outside things, what happened, the politics is fault, the system is fault, and ethnic, ethnicity is the fault. But this deeper truth that trauma plays a central role, that was very often overlooked. You had people who worked with victims of war, and they knew that trauma was, in the root of all of this, but it wasn't recognized really on a bigger level. So the concept of trauma wasn't really addressed, or it was really saved for very severe cases. If you're traumatized, something really awful must have happened to you, and you can't have it any other way. But in my work with trauma survivors, I found, of course, safety is the essential step, but also to recognize people's pain, to recognize their story, to recognize that trauma did happen to them. It doesn't have to be something severe like sexual abuse, or them seeing somebody dying in front of them. But trauma can be with a big T or trauma with a little t, but it's all trauma, nevertheless. And I think when we are approaching to people that something has happened to them, acknowledging their story, acknowledging that something did happen, means the world. Because what I'm often seeing is that a lot of victims or survivors, they come with such deep shame of what happened to them, or with such deep guilt, or with fear. And if I'm, on the other hand, not acknowledging what happened to them, I'm really losing all the safety. And we can't do anything afterwards. We can't start anything. So I think it's extremely important for us to acknowledge that there is a story of the other person. And in healing, it is so important for people to tell their story for the first time. Maybe somebody is telling you their story for the first time. Maybe it's the 10th time, it doesn't matter, but the story needs to be told over and over again until it's kind of out of the system. It can never truly be out of the system, but bit by bit. And there's a really beautiful I think it's a Slavic folk story called The Goat's Ears of Emperor Trojan. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but it's a story about this burdened barber who whispers this emperor's secret, and the secret is that the emperor has the goat ears, and he does this by digging a hole into the ground, and he tells his secret 3 times. The emperor has goat ears, 3 times. And with that, he kind of gets all this burden away from him, because he was walking around with this burden of knowing the secret but couldn't share it with anyone. And I think that's what we do with people who have survived trauma. They need us to be that space where they will share their story and kind of lift that burden off of them, a little bit. And also, in this part, what I found profound for myself, and having my own experience, it was really vital for me to not just understand my narrative and not just understand my trauma and what happened to me, but also to understand the other. Especially because of the war in Bosnia, we were deeply divided on three sides: Serbian, Croatian, and Bosniak side. And kind of a pivotal moment of my life where I really started to realize that peace building might be the key thing here for us, is that when I learned the narrative of the other, I learned the narrative of the Serbs, and I learned the narrative of the Croats, and I could put myself into their perspective, like why they did what they did, why the Serbs committed genocide over Bosniaks in Srebrenica. They did it because the Turks did something to them 300 years ago. It's not a justification in any means, by any means, but I understood that their the trauma that hasn't been addressed was transferred, and the cycle of trauma continued, the cycle of perpetrator continued. They were the victims of back then, but now they are the perpetrator, and this is what happens in the cycle of violence. Somebody does something to us, we either we either take this really long road of self-discovery and understanding, or we take the road of I'm a victim, I will never be a victim again, I will take my revenge, and then I will do to them what they did to me, and that just kind of repeats the cycle. We can also see this with Israel and Palestine at the moment. The Israelis were victims in the Second World War, and now they are doing the same thing that the Germans did to them. They are doing now to the Palestine people, and it's really sad. It proves that the trauma that is not transformed is going to be transformed in any case. So that was really important for me, to kind of sit down with myself and to understand the narrative of the other and why they did what they did. That created more space for empathy in my heart for them, and so now I can sit with a Serb and really understand where they're coming from without wanting to annihilate them. And I think also that makes the other not just this alienated other non-human being. It's not a monster anymore, it's not an animal anymore, but it's another human being with eyes and hands and feet, just like you. But just with a bit of problems. So with sharing the story and allowing people to share their story, how you can participate in this and what is something that you can do is definitely listen to the story. Reach out to someone whose experience differ from yours. I know that each and every one of us has the other in their society. I know that Bosnia is not a unique case. In United States, you have the white people, the black people, the Latinos, the whatever. And then offer these people a safe, non-judgmental space for them to share. Ask questions with genuine curiosity. Ask them about their narrative. Ask them about their side of the story. I think it's extremely important. You can reflect on shared needs. After hearing the story, you can identify where their core need is. What do they need? Most of people need safety. They need understanding. They need acceptance. And just like you. Yes, I agree, Barb, that generational trauma is a significant factor in the US with racial groups. I can echo that. I mean, I'm not an expert on USA politics or, how people treat each other, but what I've seen from this side, is I would echo that trauma is really an issue. After you reflect on shared needs, you can practice empathy. Imagine their perspective and how their story shapes their actions. Put yourself in their shoes, and then challenge your biases. Seek some books or films or events that represent narratives you might not really usually engage with, and see how that is with, how that sits with you. Maybe after watching a movie like that, you can check in with your body, like, what do I feel? Where do I feel it? How does this make me feel uncomfortable? Do I feel scared? Do I not feel safe? Why do I feel the way I do? I think these are always good questions. And yeah, so humanizing the other is step to creating empathy. It's really a step to break all that cycles of trauma and violence. So any questions, any comments so far? I would love to hear from you. Not to get sick and tired of my own voice. Yes, Josiah.
So I'm like preparing to go to the Holy Land, Israel, Palestine, and do work there. And that's one of the reasons I was really eager to join this call, because I heard somebody say like everyone there is traumatized, which I kind of believe. My question is, like, in an ongoing like conflict zone where there's still like the trauma's not over.
Uh-huh.
Um, what, like, do I need to kind of, how do I approach that psychologically? Like, what is possible for peace building, for trauma recovery in a place where maybe that's not over? They're expecting more. They're traumatized, and they're probably expecting to be traumatized again, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Okay. How would you ask that question in one sentence?
Yeah, sorry, that was convoluted.
No, that's
Um,
okay.
what should my approach be going into a location where the trauma hasn't ended, but it's still ongoing?
Mm, okay. Can I be a therapist for just 1 second with you, if
Of
you
course.
allow? Thank you for allowing me that. So if you were me right now, what would you give yourself as an answer?
Um, I'd probably say a lot of understanding, like when I'm talking to these people in the Holy Land, a lot of understanding, a lot of empathy, the things you've already said, and also realizing that it's not over and recognizing that in their story.
Mm. How do you feel about that answer?
Well, as far as I know, it's an okay answer, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Understanding, coming with certain humility that you don't have an answer, that the trauma is ongoing, but that you come there to bring understanding, and you're there to just be there and to make yourself available. I think that's really important. um, because I'm going to tell you, from my own experience, whenever foreigners would come to Bosnia, we never really clicked with those foreigners that were know-it-alls, that gave us 3 steps to this and that.
Yeah.
We always connected with people who just came, who shared their food with us, who shared their resources with us, who laughed with us, who showed their humanity with us. Those were the best kind of people, that I can recall. So as long as you're going there with that mindset, what you just shared and what you feel, I think you're gonna be fine.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope this was helpful to you. Great. Thank you, Josiah. Anyone else? Gonna check the chat also. I never checked that. Maybe somebody asked something. Okay. All right. So moving on. We don't have a lot of time. So the next thing, the third thing that I wanted to share is healing for reconciliation. Integrating trauma healing into reconciliation process rebuilds trust, fosters empathy, as we said, and supports sustainable peace. So I really believe, more and more I dive into this topic that trauma lies in the heart of every conflict. Something happened sometimes to somebody, and because something happened to them, they made a choice of doing that to the other. It can be done back to the same person that did something to them, or it can be to somebody that didn't have anything to do with them. But I really think that trauma is the root issue of conflict. And so with that, to, like I said, to truly build peace and invite reconciliation, we must recognize this. We must recognize trauma as the issue happening. Trauma in the past, I think 5 or 7 years, became the sexy word. Before that, it was stress. We were all stressed. Now we're all traumatized. It's difficulty with these popular words. They're overused. They're overexposed. They're overshared. And I think, if I see one more clip of Gabor Mate, sharing about trauma, I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is everywhere. But that doesn't take away from the importance of the subject. I think that's part of the human being. We get excited over things, and then we love to share about this. I think, was it maybe 6 years ago, I stumbled upon Enneagram. I don't know if you heard about the Enneagram. It's a horoscope for Christian people, basically. We are allowed to believe in that. And so I became obsessed with the Enneagram. Everything was Enneagram. I've asked everyone who I ever know, to take the test. What number are you? Of course, immediately judging people by their number, and these little 5 nuggets that I had for the people. And I shared it with everyone and anyone. I became, boring with Enneagram. And then it slightly faded away. Now I just talk about it from time to time, and I think it's fun, but it's not the whole story. It's not everything about human existence and who we are as human beings. I think it's the same thing with trauma and with stress. It's there, it exists, it is somewhere at the root, but that's not the whole story. That's not everything, because us as human beings, we are very complex and complicated. So slapping one word to all of us it's never a good thing. But I think it's important to recognize trauma, and to recognize trauma in a link to peace building. I think that's really, really important. So how I do my work, besides just working one-on-one with clients, I work a lot with women who have breast cancer, and they come with their own traumas. Most of the time, it's the medical trauma, because the health system in Bosnia is really awful. Sometimes they don't even have the medicine for chemotherapy, and they just, these women come in the morning and they say, we don't have go back home, we don't have the medicine for you. Or it's a very long waiting list, or it's really awful. And then I work with young people, with students whose parents survived war, And they, they haven't survived war. They are now trying to live this digital era, this global village of the world. They're trying to connect globally with with other peers. But they say, I try to live one life, but then I go home and my parents live a completely different life. And I think they have secondary trauma from their parents because their parents haven't dealt with, what happened to them. And because that trauma is not recognized, because it's not dealt with, it's being transformed to another generation. Fear can be a manifestation of trauma. Yes, Barb, I completely agree. Especially, knowing how our brain functions. Brian knows this by heart. I always share this, how our brain functions. Whenever trauma happens, we start living out of this backside of our brain called the lizard brain. It's the primitive brain. It's the part of our brain that first develops when we are a fetus. And that's a fight or flight response. If you see a bear in the middle of the wood, you're not going to go like, oh, what a cute little bear. I want to, get to know the bear. And what kind of a bear is it? Is it a polar bear or, a grizzly? No, we either, fight the bear like a guy in Herzegovina area who literally killed the bear with his own hands. No weapon whatsoever. This Herzegovinian man just strangled the bear. So that's a fight response or flight, or you just faint. That's also or fawn. Those are the responses. So yes, fear. We are stuck then in this fear mode, and the bear has gone away. We have dealt with it, but we constantly live like the bear is right in our face, and we constantly live out of our fear, out of this lizard brain. And the brain is not really capable of moving all the way to the prefrontal cortex, where it thinks logically, where it differentiates what is good, what is bad. But it's constantly in this, loophole of repeating the bear nonstop. So yes, Barb, I agree with you. And so when I'm, how I'm using my work and what I'm doing, I do this workshop called kintsugi. I don't know if you heard about this, but it's this Japanese art of breaking a pottery dish and then rebuilding it again and then highlighting it with a golden paint. And I love to do this. I think it's really important when we are addressing trauma, not to address it in a heavy way, because some people can't handle that. But if we approach it in this gentle way, where we are using our bodies, we are taking the hammer, we break the pottery, we are painting. It's a visual representation of what happened to us. And I want to allow the people in the room to feel their feelings, because one of the key things in healing trauma is allowing other people to share their story, first to create a safe space, to share their story, and then to allow them to grieve. I think this is extremely important. Without judgment, without trying to fix the people, without, telling them, but everything's going to be okay, just to allow them to grieve what happened to them. And I do this with Kintsugi workshop here in Sarajevo. And so what this does, it allows me to create these connections based on equality and shared insight, where people heal from within, from these, from their traumas and from generational pain or whatever happened to them. And I've seen kind of more and more that it's not just about talking, but it's also about doing, about including the body. I've found out that for me, what helped me in dealing with my trauma is a ritual. I did a ritual of, I told my therapist, I want to cry over what happened to me, but I just don't want to sit and cry. I want to do it literally by putting ashes on my head and covering my head with ashes. I want to do this and do grieving through this. And she allowed me to do that. I'm so grateful for her. So I think this is extremely extremely important. Any questions, comments, anything? Yes, embodiment. I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Or do you agree with me or disagree with me? I welcome it all. We created a safe space, so we can do now everything. There's a comment. Something that stuck out to me during a trauma healing course: trauma didn't break you. You aren't broken, you are wounded, and wounds can heal if proper steps are taken. I would completely agree with this. I think that so many times people who have experienced trauma, like I said, they come with a lot of guilt and shame, and they think that they can never be put together ever again. They are too broken to be put together again. But what you just said, trauma didn't break you. We aren't broken. We are wounded, deeply wounded, but but not broken forever. And yes, these wounds can help to heal in a proper way if we allow ourselves to heal. But I think, before we step into this whole like fixing problem, it is important to sit with our wounds and see what they are, what they have to say, become kind of familiar with them. But yeah, absolutely agree with you about Jason.
Mirela, I've really loved, sometimes I've heard you talk about the relationship between trauma and agency. And especially for people, like for victims, for people who've experienced injustice, marginalization, there's a real sense of lack of agency. And part of the healing process is even reclaiming one's agency, recognizing one's power. I wonder if there's comments about that, but then I'd also have a second question. And it's more, I feel like appropriately so, like even restorative justice processes, so many different processes, they are victim-centered in that victims or survivors, to kind of shift from just victim to somebody with strength, a survivor, they need to lead these processes. It's absolutely important. And I feel like with trauma healing and everything, appropriately so, there's an attention to people who have experienced injustice, victims, survivors, all of that, and an attentiveness to their wounds. My question is more related to the other side of the coin in terms of people who are members of people groups that have perpetrated trauma. And I see that here in the Balkans related to Serbs. I see it whenever, in just being in Palestine with Israelis, with Jews. I see it with, different, whenever there's a conference here and there were some Russians here in town, whenever we're at that conference with Russians. I see it with primarily white Americans, that there's sort of a fragility and sort of a perpetrator trauma of losing this sense of one's people being the hero, being the good guy. and a fragility that results. And so I'm also just wondering if we try to apply this idea of agency, of healing, like what Jason wrote in the chat, to members of perpetrator groups, of groups of more privilege and of power, what would that reclaiming of agency look like for people on the more mainstream, powerful side of the coin? And how can we be attentive to their healing as well, or from my healing, from my group's healing?
That's a really good question, and thank you for that. You know, like I shared before, a lot of times people would, you know, foreigners would come to Bosnia and they would, you know, share how we should heal. What are the steps of our healing? But, you know, not until we amongst each other started, you know, using this in our own way, you know, in our own culture and in our own, you know, pace and with our own language. Especially, you know, there are so many American, especially, you know, sentences or words that resonate with an American but do not resonate with the Bosnian. And you know, we've been, you know, translating these terms that really don't mean anything to us as a Bosnian. You know, even this whole like how do you hear this? You know, how do you hear this? Like no one ever in Bosnia says that, and it's a very strange concept. So we needed to integrate this into how we do it, and I think that's really important. And that's why I'm, you know, where I am, because I'm local. Like I've been through the war. I know what what that is, and I think, you know, that I have more voice in this concept with my people than somebody who comes as a foreigner, especially, you know, Westerners who comes and share their, you know, insights, which I don't want to like bash on foreigners. I think they brought wonderful things, but it's, you know, it's this cooperation, this partnership between foreigners and local people. You know, we heal this way, but please give us some tools that you have. That would be great. For the perpetrator, for somebody who did something to the other, I think it's extremely important to also make them feel safe, you know, because the perpetrators deep down, they also feel a lot of guilt and a lot of shame and a lot of fear. And recognizing the perpetrator as a human being is really important. You know, not everyone can do this. Not everyone should do this. I'm not saying that a victim or, you know, like you said, survivor should come to their perpetrator, give them a huge hug and, you know, be bestie with them. It's not about that. But if we're talking about, you know, big level, community level, not just individual level, it's extremely important to give the perpetrator right to be a human being as well, and to you know, make them feel safe, because then, you know, they can share their side of the story, their narrative. And also I think it's important, not just for the perpetrator to talk to another perpetrator about what has been done, but also for perpetrators to sit and you know, in humility, to listen to the other. So you know, in my concept in Bosnia and Herzegovina, you know, most healing things happened in my life when a Serb came to me and he said, I want to apologize for what my people did to your people. He didn't have to do that. I mean, it wasn't his fault, you know, per se. He didn't took the gun or anything, but he just approached me and he said, I really want to apologize, and I want to listen. I want to know, like, what do you, how, you know, how do we go from here? And that was really empowering for me. I think it's really important for the perpetrator to understand that they need to listen to the survivor. They need to listen to the victim. You cannot do this unless you work on yourself. You have to be aware of yourself. The perpetrator needs to be aware of themselves and go through their process of grief and recognition and understanding what has been done. But it's important for, I think it's important for other people to make them feel safe, because they are human beings as well. And I say this only out of my out of my experience and concept of where I live. If I'm seeing this in my family. So my husband is a Serb and my mother-in-law is a Serb, and the way she speaks politically, I do not agree with her at all, and I would, sometimes jump over the window with what she's with what she's talking about. But I'm also, seeing where she's coming from, and I'm seeing why she's telling this. What is her narrative, and that helps me to make her a human being and not just a Serb, because that's not who, that's not everything who she is. Does this help at all, Brian? What is your comment? Would you add something or disagree or agree or?
No, I really appreciate that. I think that's really true. I think like the story you shared, I think that sometimes can be done in a non-authentic way. I think the story you shared is spot on in terms of there was just a sense of connection. This Serb individual wanted to come and really kind of in a genuine way experience that. I've seen it done from a stage in ways that seem unhelpful, other things like that. But I do think what you're describing, there is a larger sense of healing, a larger sense also of kind of reclaiming of agency that also is an opportunity truly for members of perpetrator groups, not perpetrators themselves. I mean, of course, perpetrators themselves can as well, but members of those perpetrator groups to reclaim a positive kind of agency as a member of that group. And I just haven't seen a lot of attentiveness to that whenever it comes to, I think, the kind of trauma-sensitive peace building as a whole. I think that's starting, but I think there's appropriately so been more attentiveness to victims. And yet, oftentimes perpetrator groups have felt, I think, a lack of safety to begin to re-engage with the harm their own groups have caused. And it's like, we need to help these other groups re-engage in a positive way, to have a positive alternative to just remaining stuck in their group think. And the parallels of that sort of trauma responses seem very high to me. So no, I appreciate what you said. I think it just, I'm continuing to think about it myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really, it's really good what you shared. I think that perpetrators need as much help as the victims, not to be perpetrators anymore, or not to be victims in the future. And that's, that's trauma healing. You and I talk about this often, how, there is men and women are, claiming their rights now, and their voices are being heard, with movements like Me Too, and and all these other feminist movements, and it's great, it's wonderful. But I'm also thinking about men. We can't just say all men are awful. They're all, let's just scratch them all off. And we women, we are better than men. If we run the world, we would do it in a better way. We would not, because we are, we are all human beings, and we're all equally, error, we would make mistakes. Women would make mistakes, men would make mistakes. But I'm also, I'm wondering, how can we approach men and help them to realize something else, help them to heal their own trauma, because men have trauma as well. Men are not allowed to express their emotions. women are not allowed to talk about it. If they do talk about it, they're, you know, they are seen as weak, or, you know, not a real man. You know, all these other things are prescribed to them. But I'm wondering, like, okay, how can we as women, because we are in tune with that, with ourselves, how can we help men to become in tune with themselves as well? That's how we create a better society, not by saying we are better and we should run things. Because then, like, what is, we didn't do anything different than men, we just became the same. But how can we do something else and be more inclusive? You know, not to reject the other, not to reject the perpetrator group, but to include, to help them understand. And also, you know, we talked about we talked about how it would be really powerful if Bosniaks who survived the genocide would approach to Serbs and you know, and help them heal. That would be so powerful, more powerful than Serbs coming and apologizing to Bosniaks. Even, you know, that would be amazing. But there's so much more power in somebody who survived something, you know, reaching out a hand to the other. It doesn't, like I said, you know, not always. We have to, you know, we have to be careful and have our boundaries, and sometimes that's not possible ever. But I'm just talking about, you know, the power of healing and the power of forgiveness even, you know. Anyone else?
Mirela, I
Comment?
see that Quante has their hand up.
Oh, yes, Quanta.
Thank you. I'm very much involved in the peace movement and also racial healing in the United States. I've been here for 53 years, and I'm also Turkish, by the way. I'm from Istanbul. But what I wanted to say was that if someone has been dealing with lying and being oppressed or physically, mentally, I don't think that the liars and people who kill other people and people who, I mean, I, I'm not going to forgive the act of someone who has been violent to somebody else at the individual level. The society has to deal with the punishment. So I do think that we create an illusion that, you know, we give our hand and then everything is hunky-dory. So I'm trying to understand, you know, where you're coming from as far as that is concerned. And also at the same time, this collective judgment. You are white, and by default, because you're white, you're a racist and you are fragile. You're this and you're that. Does not eliminate racism itself. In fact, we create more trauma when we have this accusatory collective judgment against other people. And I mean, I have friends who are willing to do what you are suggesting, you know, shake the hands of the other. But then there are others who feel like, wait a minute, I haven't done anything to Black people. Why are you calling me racist? Why are you calling me this and this and that? So we have in our country right now polarization even within the white community who are dealing with racism in different ways. People are against critical race theory. People are against in schools teaching the atrocities and historical atrocities against Black people. So how do you bring all that together and create, I guess, ultimately unity?
So what would be your question? You know, I would.
Well, I think you can formulate a question based on what I said.
Okay, okay. I'm going to try. I'm not going to promise anything. So yes, I agree with you that, you know, generalization is all obviously not a good way. We can't just say that every white person, who exists in this world, is racist. That's just not true. We can't generalize like that. um, I I'm not saying that we should have this. I think there is some kind of like delusion of what peaceful approach is. Peaceful approach is not us, with a bouquet of flowers and just, sharing flowers to everyone, and we are such a nice people. I think that peace is very, very serious topic, and very painful topic, and very hard topic, and all this kind of la di da approach is not what peace is about. It's a negative. That's a negative peace. But I think the positive peace, where we really are with the other, is when we are constantly in a bit of this comfort zone. We are constantly being challenged a little bit by the other. So if somebody says, because you are white, you are racist, instead of taking that as an offense and immediately wanting to defend yourself, you can maybe ask yourself, okay, where is this coming from this person? Why are they saying what they're saying? How does their comment, how that does that make me feel? What do I feel when they say that because I'm white, I'm racist? It's a more kind of like this exploration, kind of experimenting kind of approach, and I think that that's the way to go if we want to heal, and if we want to be there for one another. So it's a very complex question, and I'm sorry, I'm not such an expert to answer your question, but I hope this was somewhat helpful and supportive for you, Quanta. Barb?
I put a piece in the chat about
Okay.
a short video clip between one of the US late night talk show hosts and Isabel Wilkerson, who wrote the book Caste.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about looking at the process of addressing racism in the US as like buying a house. We get it inspected, but once we take ownership of the house, we're responsible for the condition of the house.
Mm.
And so we are not responsible for the decisions that our ancestors have made for the last 400 years. But if we see that there are cracks in the foundation, that there are systems that perpetuate racism and injustice, we have a responsibility to address them, or literally our house will fall down. And that speaks to me of two things. First of all, the need for honest history, so that we know what's going on. We know the whole story, or as much of the whole story as we can ever know. And secondly, it allows us to not perpetuate the guilt, but to say, okay, knowing this, now how do we fix it? How do we make it better?
Mm.
It's about probably no more than 10 minutes, but it's a really powerful clip.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important what you just said. Of course, I'm not directly responsible, but because I own this house, because I'm part of this house now, this household, I should act a certain way. I should do some things. I you know I behave how I behave, and I'm part of my society, whether I like it or not. I represent The Bosniak, when I go to, wherever I go, they recognize me by my name, by, how I look, who I am. I am who I am. I can't change that. And because I am who I am and I come from where I come from, I have shared responsibility with, with the rest of the clan that I belong with, to how I interact with another who is maybe not a part of my clan, so-called. And, because whatever I do, I kind of do it as a representation of myself, but also as a representation of the community I come from. And I think that's kind of important, especially when it comes to this difference between the collective culture and individualistic culture. I come from a collective culture, we always use we, us. It's never me, I, it's us always. And I think we have difficulty being individuals. We have difficulty creating our own kind of individual path. But the struggle on the other side is that, there's only me, but there is not us. It's not my fault. It's these other people's fault. I have nothing to do with that. But, just because you are part of that group, there is some kind of shared responsibility. I think, yeah, I think that's really, really good. So we have 10-ish minutes. You're probably all tired by now. I know I'm sick of my own voice by this moment. So I would like to invite you. I will definitely share the 5 concepts. Somebody asked. Josiah, yes, I can. I can share that. I can type them in, in the chat. But I was thinking to maybe do a little game, little interactive game to connect us all again at the end, if that's okay with you. So I would like to ask Peter to bring the whiteboard. And I would like to ask you, participants, to think of the moment in your life when you felt hurt or overwhelmed or unsupported. Then you can, it can be a small thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, whatever that is. Then reflect on one small act. What helped you to feel safe or begin to heal? Was it, a friend invited me for coffee, or I took deep breaths, or, I, whatever, whatever it is and whatever you feel comfortable sharing. Peter will bring whiteboard on, and you can start typing in.
So I might not be able to. We had our whiteboard set up for this and we practiced it ahead of time, and now Zoom is telling me, no, thank you, not today. So maybe adapt this and do it in the chat, because I don't have a whiteboard that's working for you.
Yeah, great. We live in the here and now, so we can do, we can work with whatever we have with here and now. So yeah, maybe you can do that in the chat. Think of the moment in your life you felt hurt, overwhelmed, or unsupported.
Hello?
And then, yes?
How many cookies should I plan on?
Barb, you might want to mute yourself. And then when you unmute later on, I would love to know how many cookies you're preparing. Yeah, I want cookies too. All right, so what helped you feel safe or begin to heal? Cookies. Acknowledgement, venting to my best friend. That's great. And then again, as you're reading the comments and writing your own, I want to invite you to either respond to whatever comment is you feel drawn to, or just a little emoji, a thumbs up, or a little heart. Conversation where I'm heard, understood, and validated. That's really cool. Yes, Jason, asking for forgiveness when I was wrong. That's really important. Thank you, Nicole. I hope to see you in Mostar soon.
That would be great, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And before we leave, I would like to just, say that, at the end of the day, addressing trauma restores dignity and builds community resilience. It is reducing the risk of future trauma and future conflicts, and it's strengthening peace. I think it's really important to say that. When we recognize the root cause of trauma and create safe space for others, we become part of the healing process. We don't have to be therapists or super professionals. We in order to create this space of healing. And then we can encourage forgiveness, we can encourage healing, not forcing it, but offering it in a sensitive way, when individuals are ready and if they're ready. From my experience, addressing trauma was transformative. It built resistance and resilience in my life. After addressing trauma, I found that I could understand others better. I could understand others in their pain better. I also realized that I have so much more power than I thought I had. I'm not only a victim, I'm a survivor. And because I have experienced what I have experienced, I can offer something to the others. I had a conversation with a couple of people from Ukraine recently, and it was so powerful because I understood what they were going through, and I could, I could be there for them. And now coming from this other side, I could offer some other perspective, and it was very healing for me. It was empowering for me, and it was helpful for them. So I would encourage you to, create safe spaces, learn more about trauma, see if you have trauma in your life and how you can heal, and how to create empathy for others, and to create that space where they can share their stories, where you will be that person that other person feels good, with. They can be honest and open with you. So yeah, any comment before we close?
Yeah, Barb, we need to figure out about the cookies still.
Yes, Barb, how many cookies are you preparing?
My daughter is doing an open house this Saturday, and we're gonna be decorating cookies, sugar cookies. And
Awesome.
I had forgotten that I was unmuted.
That's okay. That's
So I wish
okay.
I could send you all some of them. You'll
Yes.
have to do your own.
Yes.
But
Thank
we're
you
gonna
so
have
much.
15 to 20 kids here.
Great, great. That's a great thing, Barb. Yeah, I didn't want to put you on spot. I'm sorry if I did, but it was
It's
just
okay.
you sharing about the cookies. So, also what I want to say before we, say our goodbyes, yes, trauma is hard. It's a very hard topic to talk about, and it's heavy so many times. But there's also a lot of humor, and I think that humor heals as well. If we can joke about things in a sometimes respectful way. I, as a Eastern European, we have very black humor, and I love it. That's why British humor is so good to me. I really, really love it. If we can joke about things as well, we have another way to connect with each other. So yeah, thank you so much for being with us today, and see us with me today. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope it gave you some kind of foundation. It gave you some kind of direction. And if you have any further questions or comments, you can write to me. You can write to Peter, and you can write to Peace Catalyst. Yes,
Hey,
Peter.
Mirela, before we go, do you want to drop the list of 5 in the chat,
Oh my God.
or
Yes.
or just list them off, and we'll make sure they get sent out to you?
Yes. Can I list them off? I'm like, technology is not my thing.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. So I'm gonna list them off and send them to Peter, if that's okay, and we can send it to you in an email.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I put
Great.
my email, Peter. I love to receive it. Thank you.
Yep. If you're
Great,
signed up
great.
for this, we have your email, so it'll go out. Yeah.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye. Happy New Year as well.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye.